Thank you for agreeing to speak with me today. It's really appreciated as always. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you. Um, I suppose the first thing to ask you is we're a year into the pandemic, nearly a year since we went into lockdown. How has that been? How have the last 12 months been?
Well, it's hard to believe that we're a year in, really. I remember this time last year thinking it'll all be over by the end of May. I mean, how wrong could I be? And I'm sure many people share that expectation. Um, Personally, I expect I've encountered many of the difficulties that other people have encountered during the lockdown, but I'm lucky that I'm in good physical and mental health, and I'm employed, and I've got good support networks. So I am conscious that many other people aren't as lucky as me. So I think as a community, it's been a tough time for us. A tough time for us.
Yeah, it certainly has, but it's been remarkable to see the way that the community is all pulled together. It's been fantastic to see, hasn't it?
It has, and the council itself has ensured that people have been supported. Council employees have made thousands and thousands of calls to people who are vulnerable to make sure that they've got food, prescriptions, company, etc. And also businesses. We've paid out more than £60 million to over 11,000 businesses that have suffered financial hardship because of COVID. So there's been a lot of rallying round, supporting businesses, supporting individuals, and making sure that we all got through this. And we are getting through it, I'm pleased to say.
Yeah, that's the main thing. And it has kind of been, in some cases, probably a trial and error because we didn't know what this was going to be like. No one knew what to expect. So, with that in mind, is there anything that you in particular or the council would have maybe looking back would have chosen to do differently?
Gosh, that's always a tricky question, isn't it? I think the mistake we can make, though, is to assume that we are at the end of this, and we're not. The vaccination programme is doing brilliantly well. You know, millions of people, 24 million, I think, as of today, have been vaccinated, and that is still going, and it's still going quickly. But we're not at the end of this yet. The time to actually look back and say we could have done that differently, we could have done the other differently, we could have improved that, we shouldn't have done that. I think that comes when we get to the end of this, when we start to come out of lockdown proper. So there will be a national inquiry locally. There'll also be some local lessons to be learned, and we should do that at that time with the full picture of what the pandemic has been like.
Certainly, and just looking ahead, as you say, we're not at the end yet, but is there anything in particular that the council had coming up and any plans that you're particularly keen to get started again? Because obviously everything's just been on hold, hasn't it?
Yes, a lot of things were on hold and came off hold. As you said earlier, the pandemic was something brand new to the world little over a year ago. And I can't really think of much that's happened so suddenly that has been brand new to everybody. There's 6 billion people on the planet. It's been brand new to. And so things that we didn't do during the first lockdown, we've been able to do safely since. So some of the plans that we had were pushed back, but now we've caught up with them. So let's talk about some construction projects. The Ripon Pool, Ripon Leisure Centre, the new Ripon Pool. That's a £10 million investment, and yes, that suffered a little bit because of COVID, because of staff reallocation, etc. But now it's back on track, and we're looking forward to opening the new Ripon Leisure Centre later this year. We've also got more than £25 million of the investment planned across our other leisure facilities like the Hydrogen Harrogate and a new Knaresborough swimming pool and leisure centre, which will be a great move forward. In the field of homelessness, we are constructing a temporary accommodation facility for people struggling to find accommodation or at risk of becoming homeless. And that's going to open soon. And it was a challenge to keep that important work on track, but it is back on track now. And we'll be opening very shortly and helping people who are the most vulnerable in society to have a roof over their heads. So, yeah, a few things have got off track. We've got them back on track, but it has been a challenging time.
In a provision like that with the homeless shelters, that is, I would say, it's a pivotal thing really, because I know that the eviction ban's been extended, but there's people across the district that have been hit disastrously because of the pandemics, and they will be particularly concerned that as they keep getting closer to that eviction ban, if they could potentially be asked to leave their homes. So having those provisions there will hopefully be reassuring. Hopefully they won't need to be used by a lot of people, but there's that reassurance there, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And part of what the council does well, particularly well, is supporting people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And that spans through things like the work we do with the Harrogate Homeless Hostel project, all the way through to building this new temporary accommodation facility to ensure that no one in the district has any worries about having a roof over their head. Everybody who needs a roof over their head should be offered it, and this will help us do that.
Certainly will. And just moving on slightly, there's obviously been a lot of costs that have been incurred because of the pandemic, and one of the ways to combat that was the proposed council tax increase, which will be going ahead. One question that was particularly asked is, can there be given that reassurance that in the next few years that another council tax increase won't occur, or if it could be considered again?
Well, the council tax level is considered every single year round about January, February time. This year's increase for the Borough Council is 9p a week, so it's not an enormous amount, and the poorest in society don't pay it at all because it's covered by council tax benefit. The Borough Council, which I lead, its proportion of the council tax bill is just 13%. The other 87% goes to places like the Fire Authority, the Police Authority and the County Council. So I can't give an assurance that council tax will never rise again. It usually does rise by about 2% a year. And in this case, as I say, it's risen by 9p a week. The council tax rise this year was the same as the council tax rise last year, at £5 a year, 9p a week. So I think that shows that the council has robust finances in place, because we've been left with a £9 million shortfall through COVID, and we managed to cover that with our own resources, and not have to increase the council tax unduly in order to plug any black holes in the finances. So I think that's quite a good thing.
You covered my next question there. I was just about to ask how much, how many costs had been incurred, but obviously that is a huge number. I can imagine at the start when those totals were totting up that it was quite a worrying situation for the council to be in.
Yes, if you suddenly find yourself losing the equivalent of 2/3 of your annual income without any notice, then it is quite a scary moment. But we've done things in the past to make us resilient. So building the new civic centre saved us £1 million a year on the running costs of the council. And that is, an enormous help when a sudden financial shock hits you. So we were well prepared to be able to adjust what we do, to be able to reschedule our finances, to be able to use savings we've made through things like the new civic centre, and therefore we haven't actually had to do any emergency budgets or anything like that, which is, I think, a testament to the way that the staff have worked in order to, mend the roof while the sun was shining.
Okay, and partway through last year there was an employment freeze put on the council. Have you an idea when that freeze will be stopped, will be lifted?
No, we keep it under review all the time. I have concerns about the stress that this places on members of staff who may be doing more than they were doing before. In other words, they're covering someone else's role. We have also redeployed staff from other services, so it's not been unusual to find someone who's a lifeguard at the swimming pools emptying your bin, for instance, because the swimming pools have been closed. We've had staff who are shielding or isolating or who had COVID, who haven't been able to do work. So staff from across the entire council have been making sure that services like waste collection and lots of other services have kept running by being very, very flexible. And I'd like just to thank them for what they did and what they are doing to ensure that those services carry on running.
What support's been put there for them if they have been struggling with changes of role or that added pressure that you mentioned?
Well, we have a range of support services available to staff, mental and physical health support services, and they're regularly encouraged to take those up if they feel they need them. They all have one-to-one meetings with their managers, and their managers are trained to check on people's mental and physical health. So I hope that that support has been accessed if it's been necessary. That's what it's there for, and it's very, very important that all of us, not just people who are employed, but people who are stuck at home, haven't got a job to go to or to do, it's important that we all take care of our mental health, particularly in these very, very different circumstances.
It certainly is. And just moving on slightly again, another particular question that was answered was how will the council support electrifying and upgrading the Harrogate line? And they were keen to mention about the proposal from Network Rail to have electric lines running over Knaresborough Viaduct. So how do the council plan to support enhancing that line?
Well, the council aren't the transport authority, that's the county council. And we don't control the railways, that's Network Rail. So let's just try and keep a little bit of perspective about what is and isn't possible from the Borough Council's remit. We are keen, though, to see the line electrified. We support that. We've said on many occasions that we support that, and we've made representations to the government alongside those other stakeholders I mentioned about electrifying the Leeds, Harrogate, York line. There are a lot of lines across the country, though, that are queuing up for electrification, so we need to bear that in mind too. In terms of electric lines across Knaresborough Viaduct, well, I believe now there are trains that can run what they call bimodal. They can run on electric, but also switch to diesel for short sections if it's impossible to actually put the necessary power connections up over what's a listed construction like the viaduct at Knaresborough. I think this is a long-term thing, a long-term ambition for people who want electrification of the line. But what I would like to say is it is great that we have seen a lot of improvements on the line over the past 10 years. We've at last got rid of the awful pace of trains that have been there seemingly forever. And we've seen the introduction of more and faster train services to York and Leeds, alongside direct services to and from London, which were introduced in the last, I think, 18 months or so. So these are all very big changes, very big improvements that have happened on our local line over the past 10 years. I don't think we should forget that progress, because it seems to me we've had more progress in the last 10 years than we've had in the last 50.
Okay, and obviously recently you've been appointed to the county's climate commission, and another question that was asked is, can you outline your green and carbon reduction plans for the borough?
Well, it's the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and I've been fortunate enough to be appointed as the vice chair representing York and North Yorkshire, and yeah, it's a great honour, but also a bit of a commitment, and I'm just delighted to be able to have some influence, have some input into that body. The council itself has an ambitious carbon reduction plan, and that plan is to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2038 in line with the IPCC, the Independent Panel on Climate Change recommendations, and we're doing things all the time to reduce carbon emissions. There's probably too many things to mention, but let's just have a look at housing, because housing is one of the key ways in which carbon emissions are generated. Poor insulation, poor energy generation, that kind of thing. So the council clearly owns housing because it's a council housing provider. And in all our solid wall properties, 530 properties in total, they've all had external wall insulation. We have A-rated condensing gas boilers fitted throughout our stock where mains gas is available. We install ground source heat pumps, very, very efficient and green way of producing energy in 100 properties between 2007 to today. We also have air source heat pumps which draw heat from the air rather than produce it through combustion of fuel. We've had those installed in properties that aren't on mains gas, 230 odd of those fitted, and we've put solar photovoltaic panels, PV panels, solar cells, on 353 properties that we own. So there's a lot that we've done with housing, but there's other things we've done too, which, if you wish to ask about, I can go into on electric vehicle charging, on tree planting, many other areas as well.
Electric vehicle charging obviously is a big talking point as well, because obviously if people are going to be investing all this money into these cars, they need to make sure that they've got the charging points there. So how many in particular are there across the borough, and what are the plans for the future? How many? What's the aim?
Well, all new houses that have the facilities for an electric charging point have to have one now. So that's a big change. The council itself has provided some of the first electric vehicle charging points in the district at the Civic Centre, the new Civic Centre. But also we've now provided them at Conningham Hall in Knaresborough, and we've just started working installing new charging points at the Phoenix Business Park in Ripon, which the council own. And we're also planning charging points in other new developments, such as the new Ripon Leisure Centre, and I expect we'll put them 2 into the new Knaresborough Leisure Centre when that's constructed. So this is a sea change in the way that we do things, in that residential housing's now got to have them, new residential housing, and we're installing them in all the new construction that we're doing.
Okay, and again, another big talking point over the last I wouldn't say few weeks, but it's a few years actually. But what is your view on the future of Rotary Wood? Obviously, a lot of people are concerned about what might happen.
Yep, I'm concerned myself. At the moment, there is an outstanding planning application for the site, and that's got to be considered by the planning committee. Now, planning is one of those processes, a quasi-judicial process. And just like the jury in a trial, I cannot say my view before we reach the planning committee meeting without risking prejudicing the entire procedure. So there is a bit of a legal issue there. But I can say something, I think, that is germane to the issue. And what I can say is really matters of historical fact. The original planning application for this bottling plant came to council for construction in 2002. I was on the council at that time. I know it seems like many years ago, and indeed it probably is. And I opposed it at that time. I was a member of a small opposition group at that time rather than the majority group on the council. In 2014, I became leader of the council, and when I was consulted on proposals to make the pine woods an asset of community value, which affords it greater protection from development, I enthusiastically supported that. In fairness, on the other side of that, I do think I should point out that Harrogate Spring Water, who were looking to develop into the Rotary Wood area of the Pine Woods, Harrogate Spring Water is a fantastic company, and it's provided employment and income for our district. It's also a worldwide brand which has put Harrogate on the global map, and I welcome that, of course, and thank the company for it. So you've got my activity in the past on that site that I've outlined, but the planning application for Harrogate Spring Water's expansion into Rotary Wood is a matter for the planning committee, and that's a decision they'll take in due course, and that has got to be determined under the provisions of planning law, and that precludes me from really saying whether I support this application or not, but I've given you some context.
Yeah, of course, and I'll include the question anyway, but it was asked if you were to ignore planning permission, should the council be considering selling a community woodland to developers? But as you said, you can't comment.
Well, no, I think I can comment actually. We're not at the stage yet where the council is considering selling any community woodland to anybody. As I've said, Harrogate Spring Water have got an application pending to expand their business into the Rotary Wood area, and really I can't comment on whether I support that or whether I don't support that, because it is part of that quasi-judicial process. But the question of sale won't even arise until that process is finished, so you can't really take one without the other. But I do have a lot of respect for the Pine Woods Conservation Group who submitted this question. I saw that they submitted it on Twitter. And the group's chairman emailed me recently about the latest planning application by Harrogate Spring Water to develop Rotary Wood. And in that email, he said to me, and I'm quoting here, "There was a compromise to be had with the company regarding this application, And he continued to say, quoting again, any lost open green space would need to be replaced, ideally on a 2-for-1 basis, talking about the trees. And he told me that he suggested to Harrogate Springwater a number of areas of land which could be used. So although the council has not yet considered the disposal of the land because the planning process has to be concluded, it is clear that the Pinewoods Conservation Group have been discussing a compromise on the land with the developers, even going as far as talking about which land could be exchanged for Rotary Wood. Now that surprises me a little bit because I don't think the public will find any such proposal acceptable. But if I was to say now that that land can never ever be sold to anybody for anything, that would actually defeat the object of those discussions that the Pinewoods Conservation Group looked to have been having with Harrogate Springwater.
Okay, that's everything I had from myself and from questions submitted. Is there anything in particular that you would like to draw attention to, or just any final messages?
No, just to say to people, stay safe, stay home. We're going to be through this soon. Let's emerge from this as a better community that looks after one another. I think that's the important thing.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.